welcome back to my channel. So this is the first sit down video I've done in a little while and I'm really excited to do this video. So if you can see from the title, this is an annotations video, how I annotate my books, why I annotate my books, and other questions that you guys have asked me. So there's probably going to be two parts to this video, I'm not sure, I will clarify in the description box. The first one is obviously going to be how I annotate and some books that I've previously annotated, the supplies I use, etc, and the second part will be some questions that you guys have asked me, because I put a question sticker up on my Instagram and lots of you guys had so many questions about annotating and I'm so excited to show you. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what annotating is, it is basically noting your book or marking specific points in the book that either mean something to you, mean a certain thing, or you just admire the writing style or whatever it may be. So here is an example of a book that has been annotated. As you can see, the tabs are quite far out in this book. That is how I used to annotate quite a lot, and I used to stick the tabs out quite far. I've since begun to kind of put them in a little bit more. As you can see here, the tabs are a little bit more discreet on the side. I'm going to get into how I annotate, and I just wanted to kind of address the stigma around annotations as well. A lot of people are like, oh my god, you write in your books, you're an absolute monster, this is disgraceful, you shouldn't do that, etc. First of all, I want to say, if they're your books, you have paid for them, they are your books, you can do what you like with them. I personally, of course, take very good care of my books and I hate when my book gets damaged, but I don't see annotations as damaging my book. I absolutely love it. I love to look back and see what I thought when I was reading that book. It just makes me so incredibly happy. Personally, sometimes I do write in my books, which I know. Okay, you're gonna kick off, but you don't have to write in your book. To annotate, you can just use sticky tabs, you can use sticky notes, you can use whatever you want to do, but occasionally I do write in the margins of my books so that I can kind of write down what I'm feeling or write an emotion that I felt or what I think is going to happen, etc. Okay, so let's get right into it with the supplies that I use. Okay, so I have this case right here. I have like one of my Owl Crate pins on the front of it. I actually only received this case yesterday, so I previously just had them in a regular pencil case, but this one is so much more organized and I honestly love it to pieces. So as you can see, when I open it up here, as you open the case here, you can see that I have various different things. So in this little flap here, I just have a pencil, a pen and a gel pen. I use the pencil if I'm not sure if I'm gonna like annotating the book, so I just write in pencil because it can be easily rubbed off. I flip over this little thing here, you can see I have some highlighters. I rarely highlight in my books, but I am trying to get a little bit more into highlighting. It just looks a little bit messier in my opinion, and I usually only highlight if it's something that I desperately want to remember, or if it's like really thick pages, because I don't like highlight bleeding through. Occasionally pens are okay, but I don't know. Then I have these little pens. They are Staedtler Ball 432M pens, and I have them in all different colors, and these are the ones that I love because they are kind of like gel pens, but they do not bleed through the page at all, so I absolutely love it. The one remaining thing in here, in this little compartment, is this little notebook here. Now, I actually have never used this notebook, and as I said, I only received this pencil case yesterday, so this is fairly new, but I decided to put this notebook in here in case there's something that I desperately want to write down, or even for my writing, because when obviously things go back to normal, if I'm in a cafe and I'm reading or I got a certain surge of inspiration and I have my pencil case with me, it would be no harm just to have a little tiny notebook that I can write down what I wanted to say in, or you know, things like that. The other thing I have is this little ruler slash bookmark. I received this in one of my Owl Crate boxes. I'm going to try and get the glare off, but I think it's so pretty. I do use this for a bookmark, but until I find a ruler that is this size, I'm going to keep this in there because I just need to underline straightly. As you can see here, in this little pouch I have sticky notes, but they are not just any sticky notes, they are transparent sticky notes. They look a bit yellow on camera, but in reality they're just clear, they're transparent, which I love because you can stick them to the book and write on the sticky note, but you're not actually writing on the book. And I would highly recommend these. They have them on Amazon, I will try to link them below, but I would highly recommend these to people who want to write their thoughts in their books but not write on their books, because you can still write on these, stick it into your book, and easily remove them. I haven't had any problem with them removing text or anything, but I usually put it on like the end of a chapter when there's like a little bit of a blank page, if you get what I mean. The final thing and the most important thing for me while tabbing is sticky tabs. These sticky tabs are perfect. I got these in a huge bag on Amazon. I will show you the bag right now. So I got a huge bag of these sticky notes on Amazon, and these were only like 10 euros for like 30 sets of these sticky notes, which I am absolutely in love with. I'll say they are very small, and I was not aware of the size when I purchased them first. I thought they were going to be bigger like some regular sticky notes that I've used in the past. The sticky notes that I've used in the past, and they are this size. So as you can see, there is quite a drastic difference between these two sizes. Personally, I kind of do prefer these, but these are like $2.99 for one sheet, whereas this was 10 for 30 sheets of these. So I really don't see much of a difference, to be honest. I would use this if it was like a very important book or something, but I don't have any spares of these. So these are just perfect and they work perfectly for me. Okay, so now I'm going to go through what the colours mean and why I tab. So essentially the colours all mean a different thing, and they are very subjective, so if you tab and you don't use the same thing for the same colour, that is totally fine. It all depends on what you associate with what colour. Okay, so as you can probably guess, the pink one is for romance or something that I just really love. It could be when the characters finally kiss, it could be when they get a new dog, it could be anything, or it could be just like a sentence that I really, really love. Next we have orange, which is coming out really pastel on the camera. The orange ones is what I use for a shocking plot twist or something that's really exciting or something that really excites me in a book, which I absolutely love using orange tabs. It rarely happens, I don't use too many of those. The pink ones is definitely the ones that I run out of so fast, and it really annoys me. I wish you could just buy a lot of pink tabs. But anyways, the orange ones is for a shocking or exciting moment. It could be an action scene that there's a lot of action going on and I'm just really thrilled, that sort of thing. Yellow is what I use if I'm annoyed, or it could be when I'm annoyed at a character, if a character does something so stupid and you get secondhand embarrassment, or it could be when something problematic happens, or when the author describes something sexist or racist or whatever. I would use the yellow tab. Green tab is for a funny moment. I usually use these if it's like banter between characters or something really funny that happens in the book. Again, this doesn't happen a lot during like historical fiction or fantasy books, but occasionally, and I definitely love using the green tabs, and reading back over those are the best. The blue tabs are for sad moments. As you can probably associate blue with sad. I don't know why we all do it, but we do, and I use that a lot too because there's a lot of sad moments and I just tab it anytime I'm feeling sad. I just do. The dark purple, I don't have a specific use for it. I mainly use it if I'm feeling an emotion that doesn't match one of these tabs, or if it's a beautiful piece of writing, or if it's like something like that I want to remember but just for personal reasons. Like it's not for like something that I think is going to come up later in the book, it's just something that I want to mark, essentially. And finally, the light purple is for foreshadowing, something that I think is going to come into play later in the book. Something, if they say like, oh, there's a long lost princess of Calabani, I just made that up, then I would tab that and I'm like, okay, I bet the main character is that lost princess. Essentially, that's what I would use the light purple tab for, something that I think is going to be relevant in the plot later on. Okay, so that explains what I use the tabs for. I also have a corresponding pen, so I will usually underline if there's a specific moment, not just an entire page. I will underline the part that I want to remember and then tab it. I will also say that I don't always tab what I underline, and I don't always underline what I tab. They're very different, but a lot of the time I will. Like if there's a specific sentence that I want to remember, I will underline it, which I use my ruler for because I cannot abide a messy line in my book. But again, sometimes I don't do that because I don't tab every single book. I don't write in every single book because I think if you wanted to get rid of a book, tabs are easier to remove than pen because you can't remove pen, so I usually do that. And I'm really excited. So yeah, that is how I annotate. I hope I made everything clear. I'm going to answer some of the questions I got on my Instagram. The poll hasn't been up for that long, so if you see like a clip put in from later date where I answer like some other questions, you will see why, but it's just the fact that this is the only time I have to actually film, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to answer my questions here. I've actually got quite a lot of them, which I'm so thankful for. So the first one is from Amazing Reads. Why do you annotate and what's your favourite part about annotating? I personally annotate for myself so that I can look back and be like, oh my gosh, I remember that moment, just to remember parts of books, because sometimes your emotions when reading a book are so strong and you just want to like remember it, you just want to be able to go to it without having to flip through the whole book, and that's why I love it. I love when I'm rereading a book and I'm seeing my annotations and I just get to see what I thought, and it's the most fun, amazing part. And that's my favourite part too, when I get to reread over them and be like, oh my god, I remember this part, it made me so happy. That sort of thing. That is why I tab. So I personally don't agree with when people are like, oh, it's ruining your books. It's not. It is actually adding to the enjoyment of my reading experience. What is the purpose of doing it is the next question. I think it's just a personal purpose. I don't think there's an actual purpose to doing it unless you're reading a book for school or for like research or something. I don't know. Personally, I only annotate them to look back and remember some things from the book, especially if it's like a dense fantasy. I will annotate that all the time because I will need to remember things, characters, world building, everything like that. Next question is, how long have you been annotating books for? I've actually been doing it for quite a while. I think about a year and a half. 2019 was my first official reading year. I've always been a reader, I've always read since I was a baby, but I have to say that 2019 was my first year that I bought hype books, that I got good reads, that I read critically, that I did everything. So I would say probably since the start of 2019 I was annotating, but of course my system has changed. I've gotten better at it, I've improved a little bit, and that's kind of where it goes. So don't think that you have to start out with all of these supplies, and I do want to just say that you do not need all of these supplies to annotate. All you really need is like a pencil or something, whatever you want to do. The first book that I annotated was Throne of Glass, and I had such a blast. I didn't write in it, I don't think, but I started writing in it later. So if you don't want to write in your books, that's totally fine. You don't have to. You can tab your books, you can put a sticky note in, whatever. There's no rules for annotating. This is just personally how I do it, and the reason that I'm filming this video is because a lot of people do ask me questions about annotating and they're like, why do you annotate? What is this? So I just thought I would clear some things up. But also a couple of people have said that they're so inspired by my annotating and they've decided to tab their own books. Shout out to Sam. And that just makes me so incredibly happy. It's like when people read The Nightingale on my recommendation. Makes me happy. The next one is, what supplies do you use to annotate? So I have showed you already, and I will link as many as I can down below, but just DM me or comment and I will try to find them as well. Caitlin asked, does your colour system stay the same for every book or does it change? I would say that I have associated these things with these colours for so long that I keep them the same, but if there's a specific book that just doesn't fit the vibe, like if I'm reading a historical fiction book for example, the dark purple could mean something else because there's not going to be a lot of moments that are very happy or anything, so I'm just gonna like change them around. But for the most part I do keep the colour system the same for each book because it just helps me remember than trying to change one for each book. Also depends on what tabs you're using. For example, if I'm using this, I have like this turquoise colour that I don't have on the other set, so I would just like substitute what the colours mean, but the bases of them are kind of the same. It's actually a good question, and it's, how do you store or put books back on your shelf without damaging the tabs in the book? And so for example, we're going to take this book because the tabs are out quite far, which I don't really do anymore. I guess I would just not push it in all the way. Like I would just keep it out a little bit so that the tabs don't bend. It doesn't bother me too much if they do bend, but I would prefer if they didn't. But for example, Muse of Nightmares, I'm using this whole series, like this is the duology, and I didn't tab this a whole bunch because I listened to the audiobook in the end. But as you can see here, the tabs are very close into the book, so it actually doesn't really affect it that much, so I just put it on my bookshelf normally. But for example of books like this, I just keep it out a little bit, just to keep them from bending. The question is, do you annotate every book you read? And I think that is a phenomenal question because I think a lot of people think that if you annotate one book you need to annotate every single book, and I definitely don't. I choose which and what books to annotate, and I certainly don't want to make it feel like a chore. It's something that I enjoy doing, and it's a way that I enjoy marking my books and remembering specific moments in books that I want to remember, whether it's because of the writing, whether it's about the characters, or whether it's just a personal reason that I really want to remember a certain scene. But I do not annotate every single book. How to choose a book to annotate, I usually read a couple chapters. If I really like it and there's things that I want to mark, I'm going to annotate it. But also I do have to be aware of the fact that if I annotate a book, it's going to be very hard to sell it or give it away, because very few people would want a book that somebody has already written in, which I completely understand. So if it's a book that I'm not 100% certain I'm going to love, I do give it a little while before I annotate, and maybe I would make a note on my phone of something that I wanted to mark. For example, I did start annotating Of Curses and Kisses. Now I didn't write in it, I did tab it a little bit, and I ended up DNFing that book. What I have to do now if I want to sell the book is to pull the tabs off, which is not a big deal. Whereas if I had written in it, it would have been a little bit more difficult to sell or unhaul, for example. So that is why I do not annotate every single book. I definitely also don't want it to feel like a chore. Like, reading should never feel like a chore, and if you're not enjoying doing something, don't do it. If you annotate one book in your lifetime, totally fine. I would usually do it again if it was for like a book club or a buddy read or something that like was a little bit difficult to understand and I really needed to remember parts of it. That is when I decide to read a book. For example, of like a Sarah J Maas book. I know I am not going to get rid of that book. I know that I am going to keep that book and love that book. Even if I don't love it, I'm still gonna keep it. So I pretty much annotate them immediately because I know I'm gonna love it, and I know I just want to remember all of these characters because she's my favorite author, favorite series, favorite books, everything, and I know I'm gonna love this, so that is why I annotate those. Okay, the last question that I have currently is, what made you start? And honestly, it's been so long that I can't really remember, but I think it was more I was watching some other booktubers do it and I was like, hey, that seems like a pretty good idea. That seems like a pretty fun little experiment. Why don't I try that? And I tried it, and then I evolved. You know, I started with just tabbing here and there, then I tabbed quite a lot, then I decided to start underlining things and writing things in the margins, which I really enjoy as well. And that's essentially it. Like, I don't know why I decided to start doing it. I think I just wanted to remember my reading experience more and maybe like be more critical of reading. Like, when I was younger, I would just read a book to read a book. Like, I wouldn't really care about what was in the book, what representation was in the book, what problems were in the book, but now I would annotate and I'd be like, hey, you know, that's actually not okay to say, or I really like that representation, and I would then tab it and remember it so that I could remember that I really like that book. So I think it was just to be more critical of my books and also just to really enjoy it and just keep a little memento. It's like a diary. I don't usually keep a diary, but I love whenever I do because I love looking back on it and seeing, oh my gosh, that is when I did that. And it's just the most fun experience. Okay guys, that is it for the questions. If you have any more questions about annotating, please do leave them down below and I can do another video or I can just answer your comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you decide to annotate your books now, or let me know if you have been annotating your books. If you want to annotate your books, just let me know if this video helped you any which way, and I will definitely see you again very soon in the next video. Bye guys!